There was a quote that you were highlighting earlier. Who was that from, about how you're never going to have a hawkish Republican Party again?
That's exactly why you should stay tuned for the next segment, because it is indeed in the article that we're about to talk about.
Excellent. Stick around for that.
Well, that's right. We can start with it right now. It is, if we can put C1 up, this is a story that was in a very long and in-depth kind of profile of the Republican Party's struggles with those cracks in the foundation that we talked about in the last segment, when you start to have people like Kevin McCarthy saying, well, we're not going to send a blank check to Ukraine, which, as Ryan points out, is different than a check. So the headline here is, the neocons are losing. Why aren't we happy? Ryan, the quote that you're referencing, that you referenced in the last block, comes from Kevin Roberts of the Heritage Foundation, who's saying that, and I'm paraphrasing this, we are unlikely to ever have a hawkish Republican president again because the movement has shifted. And he's quoted in the New Republic article as saying that. And let me just read one quote that I think encapsulates the argument of the New Republic piece. It says, the Jacksonian moment is coming. In preventing overreach and curbing the default hawkishness that still predominates in Washington, this is a welcome development. But with their hostility to alliances, diplomacy, and internationalism, the Jacksonians may make U.S. foreign policy unnecessarily ruthless and selfish while making new enemies and destroying some of our greatest strengths. From somebody on the left, do you share those concerns about creeping isolationism? And I don't mean that in a pejorative sense on the right.
I'm all for isolation. Let it creep as much as it can creep.
I thought you were going to say that.
Jackson, but why do they go to Jackson? Jackson,
it's always Jackson.
Jackson became president, because he disobeyed orders and invaded Spanish Florida. That was the thing that kind of put him on the map. His absolute genocide of the Native American population was central, to his entire political rise. And so did he? So he didn't go to war with Britain or something, and so that counts as he didn't go to war with Mexico. He left that for other people.
He's just always been that avatar of.
And so they call him an isolationist.
Right. When neoconservatives want to punch at the isolationist right, they go to Jackson.
Oh, the neoconservatives go to Jackson.
Yeah, when they want to create a sort of straw man, they go to Jackson.
Why don't they go to La Follette, the actual Republican isolationist?
You're asking the wrong person.
Weird.
Well, he wasn't president.
No, he wasn't president, but he was kind of the leading isolationist Republican in the early part of the 20th century. And that movement was really kind of smashed to bits by World War II.
Yes, it sure was.
And it took until Pat Buchanan really to start kind of showing some green shoots.
Well, and it did, and this is, I think, a bigger question about, we lose perspective on how new nuclear technology is, and the very immediate, urgent new threat that nuclear technology posed to the world, not just North America, not just the European continent, in the mid-century, right after World War II, informed what became neoconservatism. And this isn't to endorse neoconservatism, it's merely to say that it's pretty understandable at the time that if you have missiles in Cuba, there's sort of a real reason to deter that and to be doing preventative action. And the sort of Reagan idea of peace through strength, of building up to the point where you are deterring the use of nuclear weapons, because we had children doing nuclear things under their desks, doing nuclear emergency drills under their desks.
Now we traumatize our kids just with shooting drills.
We traumatize them in so many ways now. But yes, that is among many ways we traumatize them. And so the sort of broader question of neoconservatism, I think, is more understandable with that aperture. But at the same time, right now, what we see is the wreckage of decades of neoconservative policy around the world, not just in the United States. Of course, not just in the United States, very much around the world. And with that in the rearview mirror, this new sort of nuclear threat emerges at an entirely different context. And
it is interesting that you're seeing this kind of populist isolationism emerge in a similar cauldron as it did 100 years ago, the wake of the Gilded Age.
Mm-hmm.
We're in a.
Oh, that is interesting.
Everybody says we're in a second Gilded Age. And so it would make sense that the characteristics of the first Gilded Age would be reproducing themselves here. And you could see why in the first Gilded Age, you'd say, look, any war that's being fought right now is being fought on behalf of the plutocrats, the J.P. Morgan, the Chase. It would same plutocrats today would be the ones that people would see themselves as fighting on behalf of.
Arguably much worse plutocrats today, if it's possible.
I don't know. I mean, those were some pretty bloodthirsty plutocrats back then, and also it's what they're capable of getting away with.
Yeah, that's that's very true.
So they're constrained a little bit by their era. I think that's a significant part of it. That again, the collapse of the social contract results in people then not trusting their leadership, and if one decent outcome from that is that they don't want to join those leaders in wars, okay, I guess let's take that.
Yeah, it's that comparison is really interesting because what we pejoratively refer to as isolationism now, when it came to the First World War, was pretty much public opinion, and it took a long time. In both.
Wilson ran on he kept us out of the war.
Right. Well, and you remember when George W. Bush ran
Yeah.
on keeping us out of foreign conflicts? What was the phrase that he used? Nation building.
Right. We're not going to do nation building, just to destroy nations.
Right.
So he kept that promise.
Right.
He did not build any nations.
We will not be building. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. That is a really interesting comparison. And there was this huge influx, obviously, of European immigration around the time of the Gilded Age, which informed why people didn't necessarily want to be entangled in foreign conflicts as well. There was a lot going on at that time, but this kind of hubris of the post-World War II order was informed by a really strong economy and a very strong post-war economy that was built on a war in so many different ways, and there's nothing like that right now at all. If anything, we've been spending so much money in the defense sector abroad that we have empty sort of we have a tattered social safety net here.
One piece of fun trivia to finish off this block. To your point about immigrants and war, the way that World War I was sold was through anti-German hostility.
Yes.
And so there was tons of propaganda against beer because beer was considered to be German. And prohibition came about, significantly as a result of all of the propaganda against Germans to get us into World War I. They're like, well, then let's just go ahead and ban it all.
This isn't trivia to somebody from Milwaukee, Ryan. The whole history of the German beer movement, it is pretty interesting.
Wisconsin always went first with Social Security, with unemployment, with socialism. Did they ban? They didn't ban beer first, though. Because too many Germans.
I highly doubt that. We were actually the last state, I think, to give in to the federal 21 drinking age, and they did that with the
highway money.
The highway money, yeah, federal funding for highways. You really had to poke at us to get us to go along with that fascism.
We'd rather have potholes than not allow our 18-year-olds to drink.
Cable news is ripping us apart, dividing the country, making it impossible to function as a society, and making it impossible to know just what is true and what is false. But the good news is they are failing and they know it.
That is why we're building something new, a new mainstream, a healthier one, something more trustworthy, something that we are going to need in one of the most pivotal times in American history. We are building up here for the midterms, for the upcoming presidential election, but we need your help. So if you can help us out by becoming a premium member today at breakingpoints.com, we're trying to change America for the better and the entire world.
So what are you waiting for, guys? Go to breakingpoints.com and sign up and help us build a new mainstream.